Now I taught the weeping willow how to cry, and I showed the clouds how to cover up a clear blue sky, and the tears that I cried for that woman are gonna flood.
The year is it's the summer of 1957. I'm 16 years old, going to be 17 that fall, and my father had bought me a brand new Corvette, had a red and white Corvette, and all I could do, I couldn't drive it, I was out there and I'd polish the car, and I'd park the car under a porpoise shear at our home, and I'd put on Johnny Cash. I had found a record of his. It was Johnny Cash's Hot and Cold Blue Guitar, one of his early Sun albums, and I think I wore that out. I listened to that. I listened to the early versions of Folsom Prison Blues, Wreck of Old 97, the slowed down version, Pickin' Time, Supper Time, and I was just mesmerized by this honky-tonk deep sound and this incredible voice. I then got a record which became my favorite Johnny Cash record. It was Johnny Cash, and it was The Ways of a Woman in Love. And man, I wore that thing out. I mean, I was in love with my first love, which was my only wife, Diane, and I listened to that record, and I just wore it out, and I just loved Johnny Cash.
Try to pick you up and you hardly ever go. It seems your head is in the clouds above. You've got the way of a woman in love.
Years later, because we're on the East Coast in New Jersey, and we're lucky we even heard them on the radio. And now it's in 58, and I just went to college. I was a freshman at Villanova University, and all of a sudden on the air I'd be hearing I Walk the Line. I know it came out earlier, but it's finally catching on out east, and boy, I just loved that record. And as years passed, I finally heard that Johnny Cash was performing in North Jersey, and boy, I went up to hear him, and it was just, I sat in the audience, and I think that was my first Johnny Cash concert. It was at the, I don't even remember, we had Symphony Hall in Newark, New Jersey. That was my first Johnny Cash concert. The next concert I went to was Johnny Cash, and this had to now be around 68, where he is playing in Madison Square Garden. And Johnny Cash was the first performer to sell out this magnificent brand new Madison Square Garden. And I was there. Well, back then I was in the construction business, and I started to build some schools, but also as a sideline, I was instrumental in starting a small guitar company, a little company called Kramer Guitar. And how that came about is I own an industrial park in Neptune, New Jersey, and my goal was every year I wanted to try and build another building and rent it out so I would have income. Well, by this time I had 5 or 6 buildings built, and I was approached by a couple of young fellas, a guy by the name of Dennis Berardi, and he wanted to rent a building to start a guitar company. And I was intrigued, and I said, well, what's so special about your guitar? He says, we have an aluminum neck. Well, I didn't know anything about guitars, but I says, let me see it. And I looked at it, and I was very impressed. And I said, well, let me borrow it, and I might be interested in investing in a company, because he was looking for an investor. I took the guitar home, and at the time I had a construction superintendent. His name was Bill Ryan. Well, Bill Ryan had a son, Billy Ryan, and Billy Ryan played with Bruce Springsteen in the early years. And I asked the father to let his son Billy play this guitar. So he gets back to me, he says, wow, he says, this thing's incredible. He says, it's got this great sound and this great sustain. He says, but, it needs to be tweaked a little bit. He says, it's a little heavy, and he said, if you could kind of clean it up, and, he says, I think you really got a winner. So based on that, I agreed that I was interested in investing in a guitar company. So, meanwhile, these guys, Dennis Berardi then introduces me to a fellow by the name of Phil Patillo. Phil Patillo was a luthier in the next town over of Ocean, New Jersey. And Phil's claim to fame was he used to take care of Bruce Springsteen's guitars. And he helped manufacture the early version of the Kramer aluminum neck guitar. The guitar was based on a raw forging, which was made out of forged aluminum, which was manufactured by Kaiser Aluminum. And then it had to come back. You had to add wood to it. You had to put a fingerboard of phenolic. You had to do a lot of turning on a lathe, and it was quite involved process, but I was impressed with it. So Dennis says, would you invest in a company? I said, look, I don't know that much about it, but I need to see a business plan. They showed me a business plan, and at the time, they were prepared to go to a guitar trade show in Chicago. It was at the McCormick Place, and Dennis had gotten an endorsee. The first endorsee was Stanley Clark, a well-renowned bass player. And Dennis thought that at the show they could sell $100,000 in product. I said, Dennis, if you meet that goal and sell $100,000, I'll invest in a company. I believe the show was like a 4 or 5 day show, started Thursday and went through Sunday. I get a frantic phone call on Saturday morning from Dennis Berardi. Henry, you got to get out to the show. We're the hit of the show. Well, I quickly got a ticket and flew out to Chicago, and I was amazed. I could not believe this. We sold about $500,000 in guitars at this show. It was so overwhelming. I said, shit. I said, I bought myself a first-class ticket coming home. I said, I'm in manufacturing big time. So I fly home, and things get going, and we got all these orders coming in. And I mean, some people, dealers were even paying cash in advance to be the first one to have this new guitar. And that's kind of how I got started in Kramer. But now the guys needed some money. And we had to send money out to Kaiser Aluminum Company to make the mold. Well, man, I wrote out a check, $60,000, sent it out to Kaiser. Well, the machine shop that was planning to do this, we took some necks over, we're ready to go, and basically the guy says, hey, I can't start this for a couple of weeks. I'm backlogged. He says, put it in a corner. And I said, Dennis, we can't wait. We've got all of these orders. Well, he says to me, what do we do? Let's buy a machine shop. So I went out and bought a machine shop, and not a shop per se, but bought all the machines that a machine shop needed. Now we bring these back to my factory building in my industrial park, and we get it all set up. And one thing led to another, and the process was so cumbersome. We had the wrong machines, and make a long story short, we would take in 2 shifts. We could probably do 8 necks. By the time we got finished with the right machines, and we then went out and hired a tool and die maker, we could do like 20 necks in an hour. But it was just a learning curve. So anyway, that's basically how Kramer got started, which eventually took off and became one of the largest American manufacturers in the 80s. I mean, it took off with uncontrolled growth. I mean, we eventually went to wood necks because we got Eddie Van Halen as our main endorsee, and he wanted wood necks. So hell with the aluminum, we just switched to wood. And we had the Floyd Rose tremolo, and we were hot shit. So that's my entry into the guitar business. Now, the reason I'm mentioning that is because when I first met Johnny Cash, I introduced myself as being in the guitar business because I wanted to have something in common, with him. So how do I meet him? It's now probably around, I guess, 77. I lose track of time. My age, I'm 69 now. You kind of lose a little track of time. So it's either 77, 78. And I'm building a hospital in a town called Secaucus, New Jersey. Big hospital, maybe $30 million contract. And I'm sitting in a doctor's office because it was a private hospital. And they were planning to have it operated by a company out of Nashville, Tennessee called Hospital Affiliates. Well, I'm intrigued, and I'm sitting and I'm reading this book about hospital affiliates, and I see on the board of directors a Dr. Nat Winston, and that name rang a bell to me. And what it was I had just finished reading Johnny's autobiography a couple years earlier called Man in Black, and in there he attributes Nat Winston, who was a psychiatrist, with helping him get off the pill habit. So I had the doctor in Secaucus contact Nat Winston in Nashville to arrange for me to meet Johnny Cash, who was then going to perform at the Garden State Arts Center out on the Garden State Parkway, about 15 miles from my home. So I arranged to meet him, and they had a party afterwards, a welcome party, and I met Johnny Cash, and it was Phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Now I taught the weeping willow how to cry, and I showed the clouds how to cover up a clear blue sky. And the tears that I cried for that woman are gone.